They say some prisons punish the body, but this place punishes the mind. For decades, Rikers Island has carried a reputation that terrifies even hardened criminals. A jail so feared that men walked in one person and came out someone else if they came out at all. Former detainees have described it as a place where fear becomes routine and survival rewrites who you are. Tonight, we follow the story of one man who entered those gates believing he would survive anything. He was wrong, because what broke him inside Rikers wasn't fists. It wasn't the steel doors. It wasn't even the other inmates. It was the truth waiting for him at the end. And when that truth finally surfaced, it changed everything. Stay with the story until the end, because the final twist is something no one inside those walls saw coming. Before we step inside one of America's most notorious jail complexes, drop a like and subscribe if you love intense true crime and prison documentaries inspired by real events. These stories take hours to research and craft, and your support helps bring more of them to life. Now let's go inside. The transport bus moves slowly across the bridge, its engine growling beneath the silence inside. No one spoke. The men in the back sat stiff, wrists cuffed, eyes fixed on the barred windows. Through the dirty glass, the skyline of New York glowed in the distance, so close it almost looked reachable. But the island ahead felt like another world. Marcus Reed sat near the center of the bus, his jaw tight, trying not to show fear. 28 years old. First arrest. Charged in connection with an armed robbery. He swore he didn't commit. He kept replaying the same words in his head. It's temporary. His lawyer had said the hearing would be quick, a few days at most. But every man on that bus had heard some version of the same lie. The bus rolled through the checkpoint. Steel gates opened, then shut behind them. The sound was final. Marcus looked out as correction officers stood waiting under harsh white floodlights. Their faces were unreadable. No welcome, no explanation, just movement. Fast, cold, mechanical. The moment the doors opened, the smell hit him. Bleach, sweat, damp concrete, something rotten underneath it all. This opening shock of entry and sensory overload is repeatedly described in first-hand account of life inside Rikers. One of the older men beside him leaned close and whispered only 4 words. Don't trust anybody here. Then they were marched inside. The intake room was chaos disguised as order. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Men lined the walls shoulder to shoulder, some angry, some exhausted, some staring blankly ahead as if they had already left themselves behind. Marcus watched officers bark names, push paperwork across scratched desks, and shout over one another. Hours passed. Then more. No clock. No sense of time. Just waiting. That was the first thing Rikers took from him. Time. By the time he was processed, searched, photographed, and issued a gray uniform, the outside world already felt distant. His phone was gone. His belt. His wallet. His shoelaces. His name. Now, he was just another number. Across the room, a fight erupted. It happened so fast Marcus barely understood it. One shove. A swing. Then officers stormed in. Bodies slammed against the floor. Shouts filled the room. Everyone else turned away. No one reacted, as if this was normal. Because here, it was. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't jail like the movies. This was something else. Something heavier. Something designed to wear a man down before he ever reached a cell. The cell door shut with a metallic scream. Marcus stood frozen. A concrete bed. A thin mattress, a steel toilet in the corner, walls scarred with names, dates, and desperate messages scratched deep into the paint. Some were simple, stay strong. Others were darker. No one leaves the same. He sat down slowly. From somewhere down the corridor came shouting, then pounding, then silence. The silence was worse. He lay back, staring at the ceiling, and that's when he heard the whisper. From the next cell, low, careful, a voice through the vent. You knew. Marcus hesitated. Yeah. A pause. Then the voice said something that made his blood run cold. Then somebody already knows you're here. Marcus sat up. What does that mean? The man on the other side gave a dry laugh. It means in this place, your story gets here before you do. Marcus didn't sleep that night, because somewhere in the darkness, footsteps stopped outside his cell, and stayed there. The footsteps outside Marcus's cell remained for what felt like forever. He sat upright on the edge of the concrete bed, every muscle locked, eyes fixed on the small slit in the door. No knock, no voice, just presence. Then finally, the footsteps moved away, slow, measured, as if whoever had been standing there wanted him to know they had been watching. A few seconds later, the whisper returned through the vent. "Don't answer questions too fast in here." Marcus leaned closer to the wall. "Who are you?" The man on the other side let out a short breath. "Name's Ellis." His voice was older, worn down by years of concrete and sleepless nights. "How long you been here?" Marcus asked. Ellis was quiet for a moment, long enough to stop counting. Marcus swallowed. He didn't know why, but hearing that terrified him more than the screaming from earlier. Then Ellis lowered his voice. "You said you didn't do what they charged you with." Marcus froze. "How do you know that?" Another pause. "Because by the time the bus crossed that bridge, 3 different people already knew your case." Marcus's heart pounded. "What are you talking about?" "In here, information moves faster than guards. Charges, names, neighborhoods, who you know outside, who you cross." Ellis's voice dropped even lower. "And someone in this block thinks you know something." Marcus's fingers tightened around the edge of the mattress. "I don't know anybody here." "That's the problem," Ellis said. "Sometimes they think that means you're hiding something." Morning didn't arrive with sunlight. It arrived with noise. Doors clanged open one after another. Officers shouting orders down the corridor. "Line up. Move." No talking. Marcus stepped into the day room for the first time. The room was tense in a way words barely captured. Groups had already formed. Men sat at tables in silent alliances, each section of the room carrying its own invisible borders. Everyone seemed to know where they belonged, except Marcus. That made him stand out immediately. A tall inmate, with a scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheek, looked up from a table near the window. His eyes stayed on Marcus. Not curious, calculating. Marcus instinctively looked away. "Bad move," one of the other detainees muttered under his breath as Marcus passed. "Never break eye contact first." Before Marcus could respond, the scarred man stood. He moved slowly across the room, deliberate enough that the entire space seemed to notice. Even the conversations lowered. He stopped inches from Marcus. "You're Reed." Not a question. Marcus nodded once. The man smirked. "Heard about you." Marcus forced himself to stay calm. "I think you got the wrong person." The man leaned closer. "No," he said softly. "I think you're exactly the person I'm looking for." Then he walked away. Just like that. No explanation. But the message had been delivered. Marcus was now on someone's radar. Later that afternoon, Marcus was escorted back toward his cell. As he stepped inside, something caught his eye, folded beneath the mattress, a piece of paper. His pulse quickened. He waited until the officer's footsteps faded, then pulled it out. 3 words were written in rough pencil. "Stop asking questions." Marcus stared at it. He hadn't asked anyone anything, at least not anyone who mattered. Then the realization hit him. Ellis. The vent. Someone had heard. Someone was listening. The walls here didn't just contain people. They carried secrets. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, tried to piece it together. Why him? Why would anyone care about a first-time detainee awaiting a hearing? Then another thought landed harder. What if this had nothing to do with his case? What if someone inside believed Marcus had been sent here for a reason? That night, Ellis spoke again. "You need to stay away from Darnell." Marcus frowned. "The scarred guy?" "Yeah." Silence. Then Ellis added, "He doesn't threaten people unless somebody higher up told him to." Marcus's stomach tightened. Higher up? Inmates aren't the only ones running things in here. That sentence hung in the darkness like smoke. The next day, Marcus was called for legal visitation. For the first time since arriving, he felt a flicker of relief. His lawyer, Denise Holloway, sat behind a scratched glass partition, files spread across the table. But the moment Marcus sat down, he knew something was wrong. Her face had changed. She looked unsettled. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I need you to tell me the truth." His chest tightened. "I've been telling the truth." Denise slid a document toward the glass. A witness statement. Marcus stared at the name at the bottom. His face drained of color. Trevor Miles, his older brother. Marcus looked up in disbelief. "That's impossible." Denise's expression darkened. "He placed you near the robbery scene." Marcus's breathing became shallow. No. Trevor wouldn't do that. But deep down, a memory surfaced. 3 nights before the arrest, Trevor had shown up at Marcus's apartment, nervous, sweating, asking strange questions about where Marcus had been that evening. At the time, it had meant nothing. Now it meant everything. Someone had set him up, and the betrayal came from blood. At this point, the story takes a turn nobody sees coming. If you're still watching, comment "Stay Strong" below and subscribe right now, because the second half of this story gets even darker, and the final reveal inside Rikers changes Marcus forever. Now the truth starts to surface. That night Marcus couldn't sit still. His brother's name kept replaying in his mind. Trevor, the one person he trusted, the one person who had promised to help clear his name. Ellis's voice came through the vent again. "You found out, didn't you?" Marcus turned sharply. "How do you know?" Ellis let out a dry laugh. "Because I've seen this before." Marcus stepped closer to the wall. "What do you mean?" "People don't always come here because they're guilty." Marcus said nothing. Ellis continued. "Sometimes they come here because somebody wants them broken before trial." Marcus's eyes widened. A chill ran through him. "What are you saying?" Ellis lowered his voice to almost a whisper. "I'm saying somebody outside benefits if you stay scared, confused, and silent." Marcus's mind raced. Then it clicked. Trevor had debts. Dangerous ones. A name Marcus hadn't thought about in months surfaced. Victor Kane. A local crime figure Trevor once swore he had stopped working for. Marcus suddenly understood. This wasn't about robbery. This was about keeping him quiet. Because Marcus had seen something weeks earlier. A late-night exchange behind Trevor's auto shop. Cash. Weapons. A police cruiser parked down the block. And one officer speaking directly with Kane. Corruption. That was the secret. And now someone believed Marcus knew too much. The cell block suddenly felt smaller. Because now the danger wasn't random. It was targeted. And someone inside Rikers had been paid to make sure Marcus never spoke. The next morning began too quietly. No shouting in the corridor. No door slamming. No voices from the day room. For the first time since Marcus arrived, the silence felt deliberate. A correction officer stopped at his cell and slid the door open. "Read. Move." Marcus stepped out, wrists tense at his sides. "Where am I going?" The officer didn't answer. That was the first sign. The second was the route. Instead of leading him toward legal visitation or the day room, the officer took him down a side corridor Marcus had never seen before. Narrower, dimmer, the overhead lights flickering with a cold white buzz. Every step echoed. At the end of the hall, the officer stopped. "Wait here." Then he walked away. Marcus turned confused. The corridor was empty. Too empty. Then footsteps. Not one pair. 3. From the shadows of the far end. Darnell emerged with 2 other inmates behind him. The scar on his face seemed sharper under the fluorescent light. Marcus's pulse spiked. Darnell smiled. "You should have stayed quiet." Marcus backed up instinctively until concrete pressed against his shoulders. "I don't know what you think I know." Darnell stepped closer. "That's what everybody says." The hallway suddenly felt airless. But before anything could happen, a voice cut through from behind. "Back off." All 3 men turned. An older officer stood at the corridor entrance. His expression was unreadable. Darnell stared at him for a moment, then slowly stepped away. No words. No protest. Just obedience. Marcus's heart pounded as the men disappeared down the opposite hall. The officer looked at Marcus. Wrong place, wrong time. But something about the way he said it made Marcus realize this had been no accident. Someone had walked him into a trap, and someone else had interrupted it. For now, that night Marcus went straight to the vent. "Ellis." Silence. Then the familiar voice returned. You're still breathing. That's good. Marcus leaned closer. They tried to set me up. I know. Marcus froze. How do you know? Ellis exhaled slowly. Because I heard the officer's keys stop outside your cell before sunrise. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Then tell me what's going on. For the first time, Ellis didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice carried something heavier. Regret. I knew your brother. Marcus went still. What? Trevor used to come through here years ago. Marcus's stomach dropped. Ellis continued. Not as an inmate. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? Ellis lowered his voice. He worked maintenance contracts on the island, delivered supplies, knew officers by name. Marcus's mind raced. Trevor had never mentioned that. Not once. Then Ellis said the words that changed everything. He was never trying to protect you. Marcus's breath caught. He was protecting himself. Marcus stepped back from the wall as if the words had physically hit him. No, he owed Kane more than money, Ellis said. He owed silence. Marcus's thoughts spiraled. His brother hadn't just betrayed him. He had placed him inside the one place designed to crush him. The next legal visit changed everything. Denise was waiting. But this time, there was something in her eyes Marcus hadn't seen before. Urgency. She slid a small printed transcript across the table. We found something. Marcus looked down. It was a partial phone call transcript obtained from an internal investigation. 2 voices. One identified as Trevor, the other redacted. Trevor's line read, "He saw too much. If he talks, Kane goes down, and so do the uniforms." Marcus stared at the words, unable to breathe. Uniforms. It wasn't just Kane. It was officers. The corruption ran inside Rikers itself. Denise leaned closer. Marcus, listen carefully. There's an investigation opening outside. But someone inside this facility knows about it. His voice trembled. So what do I do? Denise's expression hardened. You survived long enough to testify. The sentence hit harder than any threat, because now survival had a deadline. He just had to make it out. That night, the pressure finally cracked something inside him. Marcus sat alone on the concrete bed, staring at the scratched words on the wall. No one leaves the same. He finally understood. This place didn't need to destroy the body first. It worked on the mind. Sleep deprivation, constant fear, isolation, betrayal, the knowledge that even authority could not be trusted. He thought of Trevor, of childhood memories. 2 brothers on a summer street, basketball courts, late-night jokes, shared dreams, all of it now poisoned by one truth. Trevor had chosen himself and sent Marcus into hell. Then the whisper came again, but it wasn't Ellis. It was another voice from farther down the block. Low, panicked. They took him. Marcus stood instantly. Who? Silence. Then, the man in the next cell. Marcus's blood ran cold. Ellis. No response. Only the distant slam of a steel door. And then the corridor went silent. Marcus stared at the vent. For the first time since arriving, nothing came back. Ellis was gone. And Marcus suddenly realized something terrifying. What if Ellis had been helping him because he knew he wouldn't live long enough to leave? The next 48 hours inside Rikers felt less like time and more like survival measured in breaths. Marcus no longer saw the jail as walls and steel doors. By now, it had become something else, a machine built to strip away certainty. From the moment he crossed the bridge, every part of his life had been dismantled piece by piece. His freedom had been taken in intake. His peace had been taken in the sleepless nights. His trust had been shattered by whispers in the dark. And finally, the deepest wound of all had come from outside the walls. The brother he loved had been the one who placed him there. The silence after Ellis disappeared was louder than the screams Marcus had heard on his first night. For days, that voice through the vent had been the only thing keeping his mind anchored. Ellis had warned him about Darnell, about the officers, about the fact that some people entered Rikers not because they were guilty, but because someone wanted them broken before they ever reached a courtroom. Then the truth came all at once. During Marcus's final legal visit, Denise returned with investigators from outside the facility. The transcript was no longer just a suspicion. It had become evidence. Trevor's voice on the recorded call confirmed everything. Kane had been using the jail as a pressure chamber, and corrupt officers inside had been helping him. Marcus wasn't there by accident. He had been placed in the most feared environment possible, so fear, exhaustion, and betrayal would force him into silence. But the most devastating revelation came moments later. Ellis had not simply disappeared. He had been removed after giving a confidential statement to investigators. His real identity was revealed in the final report. Ellis had once been a corrections staff member turned whistleblower, a man who had spent years exposing the culture of violence, corruption, and silence inside the island before being silenced himself through a wrongful detention arrangement. He had recognized Trevor's name from old maintenance records and understood immediately that Marcus had been used as collateral damage in a much larger conspiracy. That was why he helped him. That was why he vanished. And that was why Marcus now understood the true meaning of what Ellis had said on the first night. No one leaves the same. Marcus did leave, but not as the man who entered. Weeks later, in a packed courtroom, Trevor finally stood only a few feet away from his younger brother. Gone was the confidence Marcus remembered. In its place was fear, the same fear Marcus had lived with inside Rikers. The prosecutor played the recording. Trevor's voice filled the room. The silence that followed felt heavier than the prison doors. Marcus looked at him, searching for some sign of remorse, some trace of the brother he once knew. Instead, Trevor lowered his head. That was the final betrayal. No apology, no explanation, only surrender. Kane and the corrupt officers were later charged as the case widened, while Trevor faced charges tied to the robbery setup and conspiracy. But for Marcus, the deepest damage could never be measured in legal terms. Rikers had broken something in him. Not his body, not his will to survive. It had broken his ability to trust the people he loved most. And that truth followed him long after he stepped back into sunlight. Because sometimes the prison isn't the place you enter. Sometimes it's the memory you never escape. Rikers Island has long been described as a place that changes people. A jail where fear, isolation, and violence can reshape a person long before trial. Public reports and investigations have documented its reputation for systemic abuse and corruption. Marcus survived the island, but survival came with a cost. A brother lost, a truth exposed, and scars no one could see. If this story kept you watching to the very end, subscribe right now for more intense prison and crime documentary stories inspired by real events, and comment below. Would you have trusted Trevor again? Because sometimes the worst betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from family. And sometimes the prison that breaks inmates begins long before the cell door closes.